All right, well, let's get started with today's virtual lunch and learn. Hello, my name is Ryan Wilson, and I'm the Director of Corporate Relations for the Greater Houston LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm proud to invite you to today's lunch and learn, Intersecting Identities, Disability, Disclosure, and Belonging in the LGBTQIA 2S plus community with special guest and filmmaker and a friend of our chamber, author Fiona Dawson. Welcome, everyone. I also want to acknowledge that Corinne Shoemate, our chamber's program and events manager, is helping manage today's Zoom. And if you have any questions or need any assistance, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Today's program is being recorded, and we will have um, the recordings of today and other past events on our YouTube channel. Um, I want to start out today's conversation with some grounding. We're excited that it's Disability Pride Month in July, and we are recognizing the natural diversity of ability in humanity and pushing for a world in which our communities accommodate and uplift disabled people to create a more equitable society. Um, We're excited that we are joined today by the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our friends in Austin. And if you haven't joined our chamber events before, I just want to do a quick introduction to let you know about the Greater Houston LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce. At the chamber here in Houston, we say that we work at the intersection of the business and the LGBT community. And our focus is really on business development, economic growth, and helping our community thrive. This event today, in particular, is part of the LGBTQ plus Workplace Alliance program, which is a special program that we've created for our chamber impact partners. Those are companies with over 500 or more employees, many of which those companies have LGBTQ plus business or employee resource groups, E, ERGs or BRGs as they're known. And these events that we normally host are part of those special benefits. But today's program, we've opened up to all of our chamber members and our guests from Austin because we think today's topic is that important. Also, let me give you just a quick outline of some of the upcoming chamber events, and you can scan the QR code on your screen to learn more about our various events coming up in the near future. But really, everyone is here today because we're excited to welcome Fiona Dawson. Her pronouns are she, her, and she is with Free Lion Productions is the name of her company. But she also works for the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce and has a new role as director for uh, Equality Texas's Texas Competes program. Sorry, I get a little tongue-tied there. But what people may know, Fiona, if you're from the Houston area, is she was once a Pride Grand Marshal and a proud resident of our city. And Fiona is also a very open bisexual advocate around the country. And I have had the honor of learning from Fiona and knowing her for more than a decade. So I'm really excited to turn today's program over to Fiona so that she can really help carry this conversation and teach even me a few things I don't know as we have today's lunch and learn. So Fiona, take it away, friend.
Oh, thanks, Fran. Thanks, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be with you all. And actually, looking at those slides, that's awesome that Shell, you're doing something with Shell because I also used to have a job at Shell years ago, which was another blast from the past. So I'm thrilled to be with you. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And at this point, great, Ryan, you want to give me a thumbs up and I can, great. Okay, you can see my screen. So I am going to whip through my presentation and leave as much time as possible for Q&A. But as Ryan said, if there's anything that I haven't covered, please do reach out to me afterwards. So happy Disability Pride Month, everybody. This year, the theme is the world works better with us. Disability Pride was started in 1990 in the United States with the signing of the ADA, or the Americans with Disability Act. And now it is celebrated globally every July. I'm going to start my presentation or kind of discussion with you with a bit of welcome and grounding. First of all, I'm going to give you my visual description. So, I am a white woman sitting at my desk in an office with a lamp and a window behind me. I have curly reddish hair that falls below my shoulders. I wear bright red lipstick, which is a signature because I like to exude color in the world. And I am wearing my reading glasses, which I am wearing more and more often these days. And I'm also using my AirPods today, but typically I have my hearing aids in. As I am hard of hearing, I use two hearing aids, and I have chronic tinnitus, which is something that you can't see, but I can tell you all about. So, chronic ringing in my ears. I'm delighted that my friend Amber of Amber G Productions is providing the ASL interpretation today. Thank you so much, Amber. With regard to language during my presentation, I typically will start with the longer acronym of LGBTQIA2S plus, the 2S standing for Two Spirit. And oftentimes I might use the word queer in place of LGBTQIA2S plus for ease of communication. At this point, I also do want to acknowledge the historic negative connotation and aspect of queer. And I realize that not everybody fully embraces the term. And my trust and hope is that you are okay with me using that word today in the presentation. Also to note are the words disabled and living with a disability. Some people prefer to say I'm a disabled person. Some people prefer to say I live with a disability. So I also use those interchangeably. When it comes to slide description and Slido, I am going to describe the images on the slide when it is necessary in order to get the message. So not every slide will be described visually, but for those who are sight impaired or blind, and I feel like they might be missing something if they don't know a picture on the slide, I'll describe it. I'm also going to use the app Slido, which requires using a QR code that you can scan with your phone and you can participate. Slido is reasonably good at accessibility and accommodations. But if you're not able to use Slido, please feel free to use the chat or other means to communicate during the presentation. I'd also like to start with a land acknowledgement. And give me 1 second, I need a sip of water. My mouth is already dry. So my next slide is a land acknowledgement that I like to use as a grounding for our presentations. And I'll also add that those of you that can hear my accent can hear that I have a very English accent still. And I'll give you a bit of my background. However, I was born and raised in the United Kingdom, but lived in the United States now for about 26 years. And for me, becoming as an immigrant into the United States, and also with queer and disabled advocacy, a land acknowledgement feels extremely appropriate. So I'd like to start by saying, as we gather virtually from across the United States, we acknowledge that each of us is joining from the ancestral and contemporary homelands of Indigenous peoples. We honor their enduring connection to these lands and recognize that Indigenous communities include queer, two-spirit, trans, non-binary, disabled, neurodivergent, chronically ill, and countless other identities and lived experiences that have always been part of these communities. We begin with gratitude, humility, and a commitment to belonging that honors every person's full humanity. Thank you. So the next slide here is the QR code for you to join Slido. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to ask you questions. We've got a little quiz at the end. So feel free to take your phone and to scan the QR code. I recognize that not every company would allow you to do this. But if you want to participate there, and you can have the ability to put your name if you want, I have left all of the questions and answers anonymous, so your name is not going to show up. So you can put whatever you want where it puts the name. And we're going to practice using Slido. The top left here is the QR code. And the question at the top is, what workplace superpower do you wish everyone had? So imagine in your workplace, And what superpower do you wish everyone had? And this is going to create a word cloud for us. So we started off with listening and with humility. I see somebody's put empathy. Thank you very much. Transparency. Empathy is getting an uplift. I'll give a couple more well, I'll give about 10 seconds, 20 seconds. One word that describes a superpower you wish everyone had: collaboration, freeze time, transparency. Collaboration is getting some more. Assume best intentions. Sense of urgency. Support, attentiveness, patience, consideration. Reading these, empathy comes up again. A lot of these words make me feel warm inside. Respect. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give a few more seconds and then we're going to move on to one more question before I start more presenting. Okay, we're going to go to the next one. Now, what's your workplace superpower? So you've put in what you wish everyone else had or what existed in your workplace. What's the thing that you bring to the team and to the workplace? We started off with positivity and happy, dedication, emotional, creativity, proactive, visibility, listening, emotional intelligence, mindset, laughter, dedication. I think creativity came up. Yeah, creativity is getting an uplift. Collaboration, love. Oh. Okay. Well, thank you so much for participating. Oh, collaborations come back up again. Excellent. Collaboration's getting another one. And so what we wish for in others is often what we hope we give out into the world and into our workplaces ourselves. Here's listening as well. And I love like reading these and learning these adjectives because they make it feel like a cohesive, kind, and courageous workplace. So with that, I'm going to move to the next, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and why I guess Ryan decided to invite me to come and present you all today, which I'm extremely honored to do. This slide here is a rough sketch of the world map, and it's got stars dotted all across it, everywhere, all the way from New Zealand all the way over across to Canada. And so you can see that I've had the opportunity and the privilege and the fortitude to be able to experience either through work or through vacation. In fact, my brother lives in New Zealand, my sister and my family live in England, and I've been in the United States now for 26 years. And so I've had the opportunity to be able to do work and lived experiences all over, including doing a film in Zambia and in Brazil. So a lot of these cultural experiences kind of shape the message and the storytelling that I have today. I moved to Houston, Texas, by the way, 26 years ago. That's where I first lived. And this next slide shows a picture of me when I'm about 9 years old, walking with my mother. So I was born in 1977, by the way. I'm very proud to say that I'm nearly 49 years strong. So let's say 40 years ago in rural Lincolnshire, and it's very, very flat, and there's a lot of cabbage fields, and there's mud, and there's rain. And this photograph, I kind of feel like I look like my mother's mini-me, where we've got like very short hair, and we're walking along in our welly boots and a big puffer jacket. And I always emulated my mother, and she was such a strong role model for me. And I remember like I loved having my short hair like hers, but oftentimes I would get misgendered as a child, which today just sound, that would never happen. But oftentimes people would say to my parents, oh, that's great, you've got two boys and a girl, and they would have to correct and say, no, actually it's two girls and a boy. The oldest one just has short hair, but she is a girl. But I always found that interesting of having that experience as a young child. And then when I was a teenager, this picture here is me as a teenager sitting on a bench with my father. And my dad once said to me, I can understand men being gay and I can understand women being lesbians, but I think bisexuals are just greedy. And again, it was like a funny little story that he popped out with. But all this time growing up, I had no sense of my own identity, of being any other than, a straight cis woman. Those words never came into play. And so it's interesting that now today as an adult, a lot of my career and work is focused on LGBTQIA plus advocacy. However, when I was 21 and graduated university, I decided I wanted to go volunteer in Bangladesh. And so this is a picture of me eating food with my fingers for the first time, dressed in a sari. I can't believe my parents in 1998 allowed me to go to Bangladesh by myself. There was no internet really, it was just emerging. I didn't have a cell phone, no social media, but it was one of the greatest experiences still actually of my life. But while I was in Bangladesh, I met and fell in love with a US Marine, and the Marine and I ended up getting married. He left the Marines and came back home to Houston, Texas. And so this image is of me sitting at Fort Worth outside of Dallas, sitting on a great big bull with great big horns going yeehaw. And that was my entry to Houston, Texas. And so it was delightful to meet Tammy Wallace at that time, through the CEO of the Greater Houston Chamber. And I started my career in the nonprofit sector, but immediately dove into advocacy as well. So in 2004, that's when my marriage ended and I happened to come out as gay in 2004. And I came flying out the closet, and so much so that I won the honor of being the female Grand Marshal of the Houston Pride Parade in 2009, as Ryan said. But after several years later of personal growth and expanding my worldview of gender and sexual orientation, I began to realize that actually I had the capacity to be romantically and or sexually attracted to people of any gender. And so the word bisexual felt better for me. So in 2012 was when I came out as bi. The image on the right is a screenshot of my YouTube video, which I uploaded again in 2012. So it kind of looks like a dinosaur uploaded it these days. But I felt like it was really, really important always to be out and to be visible and share my story so that other people could identify and we can build community together. So today, this image here is me all dressed up glamorous, looking like a 1950s glam woman in a tight red dress, standing in front of a camper van, which is my vintage cruiser. And this was taken a couple of years ago. I actually live in an RV on Pecan Grove in downtown Austin. And I love living in an RV. I've lived there for about four years. And a few years before living in the RV, I was still living in New York because I moved back to Texas during the pandemic. And that is when I realized, I'm going to shift to talking about my disability story. And that's when I realized that my hearing was getting to a point where it was prohibiting me from being able to easily and accessibly function within workplaces and within the world. So it was 2019 that I got diagnosed as being hard of hearing and needing hearing aids. And the tinnitus, the constant ringing, was getting worse and worse. And so I got my first pair of hearing aids in 2019, and it was just a game changer. Even without having to tell people I was wearing hearing aids, all of a sudden my friends and family were like, you're asking me to repeat myself like less often. What's going on? And so it was just such a relief to be able to have that diagnosis and then have that support. And I have my own business called Freeline Productions, and that's how I got to know about Disability In. And so my business is certified as a disability-owned business, and I really leaned into learning about disability awareness and advocacy and accessibility. And this photograph here is me on stage at the Disability Conference in 2013. And I have made so many friends. And I would say after all my years of advocacy amongst queer communities, it was then being in disability spaces that just kind of really broadened my perspective again. And so the photographs that I'm showing up here is one of me in front of the disability and logos. The next one is me hugging my friend Jessica at another disability and conference. And then the third picture in the middle is with my friend Carson Tula. And this photograph is taken actually of us at Out and Equal. So in addition to being part of Disability In, I also volunteer for Out and Equal. Carson and I co-chair one of the disability and LGBTQ plus belonging group that has been just an extraordinary opportunity to be able to hear other people's stories. People remember stories about 22 times more than facts alone. And it's by building a network, building your friends, and hearing and learning about other people's experience that we really kind of learn and expand our mindsets. And so this photograph with Carson and I, Carson is also a white person, very masculine presenting. He uses a wheelchair for mobility. So he's sitting in his and he has a beard and curly hair like me as well. And he feels like family. So with that, I'm moving on to another Slido, and I would love to know in the audience, are you disabled and LGBTQIA2S plus? And your options are, you could say yes to both, or you could say yes, just LGBTQIA2S plus, or yes, only to disability, or no to both. I'd love to know who's on the call today. And so currently the slides are going 56% are saying yes to LGBTQIA2S plus, around 30 yes to both. That's excellent. So it looks like we've got a third yes to both, 2/3 yes to just queer only, no to both, coming in a little bit. That's great. Okay. Thank you so much for your participation. This really helps me know who's on the call. So it looks like around 56% yes to just LGBTQI2S plus only, 38% yes to both, 6 no to both. Well, thank you all for being here today. And so the 3 points that I would like to cover in our presentation are going to be, number one is talking about awareness and recognizing the overlap within our communities. Number two is empathy and understanding each other's experience. And number three is taking action and how to create belonging. And so first point, we want to start off with awareness and recognize our overlap. So this is going to sound like a very quirky question to you. How many types of beer are there in the world? And this on your Slido again, you can scan the QR code. How many types of beer are there in the world? Just have a rough guess. No looking up online. There's no correct answer. Let me see if you can. Oh, good. Okay, here we go. 1,500. Anyone else take a guess? 50. Okay, 1,000, 2,500, 400, 3,500, 1,000, 300. Okay, I'm going to move on because we've got very important things to discuss in addition to the types of beer in the world. 350, 3,100, like, and one, I love that. I love the specificity of that. So yes, we can take a broad guess. In fact, studies show there's an uncountable number of beers. There is no one person has decided exactly how many beers there are. However, there are reportedly like hundreds of brands. There are probably thousands of different types, and they also roughly form into two different categories. But the reason I bring this up is because I'm going to play a video in a moment, just less than 2 minutes long, that actually uses beer as an analogy. And of course, we can also have alcoholic beer and non-alcoholic beer. But I like to kind of present the framework that all of us could relate to beer, or we could relate to cake, or even like potatoes. There are, hundreds of different varieties of potatoes. Let's examine ourselves as humans as to the intersection of our diversity and how we're made up. So I'm going to hit to this video, and I'm hoping, Ryan, if there's a problem with the audio, that you will let me know.
Hey there, my name's Fiona, and I want to share my passion for people with you. We're all unique, beautiful humans made from a mixture of different traits. Let's say a bit like ingredients in beer. Different ingredients can be found in the same category, but within that category, there's a whole spectrum of their colours, shapes, sizes, and so on. Some of these ingredients we are born with and cannot control. Traits like our race, colour of skin, gender, sex, sexual orientation, physical ability, personality, our height. These human dimensions are not a choice. They are boiled, fermented, and matured within our bodies. And then through our life, to varying degrees, we can gain, grow, or lose other ingredients like income level, education, political beliefs, religion, language, family, to name just a few. Some of these human traits, like our gender expression, tone of voice, colour of skin, disability, are visible by how we present ourselves to others. And often we make assumptions about someone based on how they look or sound to us. But many more traits, like gender identity, values, beliefs, education, sexual orientation, are beneath the surface. And like all of the labels, they too affect the way we perceive the world. There are nearly 8 billion people currently on our planet, but because so much is hidden, we can truly only understand someone's human experience by listening to their personal story.
Okay. So, as Ryan said in my introduction, I'm a filmmaker, so I'm extremely passionate about uplifting, sharing our personal stories in order to understand one another. Thank you for the hearts, Ryan. That's so cool. And so, on this image here on the slide is like this mosaic of a heart. And if you think about, again, using another analogy, oftentimes we might have a similar piece of glass that makes us up, and it might be a similar color, but it might differ in its shape or its size or its representation. And so we are all like unique spiritual beings having a human experience. And that shows up in different ways through our lives. So when it comes to the iceberg, I know that this is a very common analogy that's used in educating people. And so think about it this way as well. If we imagine like we're icebergs, and so you've got this top part, and oftentimes people will say visible. I prefer the word apparent because what we're so that to be inclusive of people who are blind or sight impaired, because even though you might visually not see something with your eyes, it's the apparency, it's the interpretation that you're having of somebody else. And there's such a small part that we're making assumptions about each other based on the interpretation that we're getting of how somebody appears to us. And so some things are very apparent. Like if you can see the color of my skin, you can see that I am a white woman. And if you can hear my voice, you can hear my English accent. But what might be less apparent are those things that kind of go up and down and can vary whether they're apparent or not apparent, because what's non-apparent to people, using myself as an example, you hear a British accent, but inside I actually feel like I'm very Texan. I've lived in this country for over half of my life. And so for me, I identify culturally very much with this state more than I do going back to England. And those are just very superficial, I feel, high level examples. But there's so much about all of us, whether we're living with a disability or not, no matter what our orientation is that most of who we are is non-apparent and beneath the surface. So when it comes to disability awareness, on the left side of the screen here, we have the disability pride flag, which involves 5 different stripes. And so the lower stripe, and they go horizontally, and the one on the lower side is red, that stands for physical disabilities. Then you have gold for neurodiversity. You have white for non-apparent or undiagnosed disabilities. Blue is psychiatric and emotional disabilities, and green is sensory disabilities. And the faded black background, this represents mourning and rage for victims of ableist violence and abuse. And the diagonal band symbolizes barriers being broken, allowing light, creativity, and talent to shine. So this is what makes up that our pride, disability pride flag. And when it comes to these different types of disabilities, here on the screen, I have another slide that gives some examples of physical disabilities, might include cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, spinal cord injury. Gold can be neurodiversity that includes autism, ADHD, dyslexia, so on. White can be non-apparent, like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, lupus, long COVID. Blue, depression, anxiety, PTSD. And green, sensory disabilities like blindness or low vision, deaf or hard of hearing, and deaf blindness, tinnitus. And so if you can imagine, most people aren't just going to identify or fit in one of these colors. Again, I'm hard of hearing and I have tinnitus. So not only would that be green, but it's also white, where it can be non-apparent. So within the spectrum of people living with disabilities, often people have more than one. In fact, there's one of my friends in our Out and Equal Belonging group. I think there's about 19 different belonging groups, and one of my friends proudly identifies as being in 14 of those belonging groups that each identify with a different aspect of humanity. So there's so much overlap in the type of disabilities. So here's another quiz for you with Slido. What percentage of disabilities do you think are non-apparent? So disabilities that are not immediately apparent when you're meeting somebody for the first time. And the choices that you have here go from 66%, 27%, 75, 52, and 70. So what percentage do you think of disabilities are non-apparent? Let's see. There we go. Okay. So looking at the results coming in, we've got about 40% of you say 66, 30% say 75, 20 say 52, 70, there's 10% of you. Okay. And the answer is, in fact, we went back. Hang on. There we go. All right, 42% say 75. All right, I must not have clicked the answer on my Slido. The answer is 75. And in fact, some reports say up to 80%. So, which is huge, isn't it? Like that many people are living with disabilities, and we actually have no immediate awareness that they are living with a disability or are disabled. And so the disabilities can also have fall into 4 other categories. And so on this slide here, I have a vase of sunflowers, which I'll tell you about in a second. But I have like 4 different categories listed, and one is duration. So disabilities aren't always permanent. They can be episodic, they can fluctuate, they can be temporary over time. The origin, they can be present from birth and or acquired, but they can also be a spectrum between that. So for example, my tinnitus and hard of hearing is hereditary, but it was not present at birth. It came on late onset. It came on later in my life. And so progressive, when it comes to progression, they can be stable, progressive, or degenerative. And then visibility can be apparent, non-apparent, or sometimes both. So again, like if you can see my hearing aids, then it might be apparent that, I'm hard of hearing. So there's so many different layers to disability. The sunflowers that I wanted to uplift on the left here, this is actually a photograph of some sunflowers my partner James got me. He lives with ADHD, and he's extremely hyperallergic and hypersensitive to almost everything. And so, even my lipstick, which is a bit of a shame. But anyway, he bought me some artificial flowers so that we could have flowers in the house without him having an allergic reaction. But the sunflowers represent an organization that started in the UK. It's now in over 90 different countries worldwide, where it started in Gatwick Airport. And so if you see people wearing a lanyard with sunflowers, it demonstrates that you're living with a non-apparent disability. And so if you, it started in airports where people, might need extra support or accessibility. And so the sunflower is a representation of non-apparent disabilities, which makes me feel like I need another tattoo. I have a very audacious lion tattoo on my arm, along with other tattoos. And I think the next one needs to be a nice sunflower. And so disability across the world, like when it comes to our numbers, and as it relates to the queer community, you've got 1 in 6 people in the world live with a disability, which means that people with disabilities are the world's largest minority. And then out of US adults, more than 1 in 4 live with a disability. But then within our queer community, it's more than 1 in 3. And you would wonder, like, why does the queer community, why are we more likely to be living with a disability? And I feel like there's a lot of overlap in my lived experience of having, lived as an out queer woman, lesbian, then bisexual, being in very queer centric spaces. And then over the last 5 to 6 years, becoming increasingly more in disability spaces, seeing the overlap within our experiences while also acknowledging the difference, I think is really important. So both with queer and disabled identities, some are apparent, some are non-apparent. So for example, some of you might relate, as a femme presenting woman, I often used to get questioned about whether I was queer enough or I didn't look queer, or so on and so forth. The second level, some people know very early in life, and then some people discover later, and that could be similar too. Like, I never was suppressing any sexual orientation; it just didn't come out to myself until I was in my late 20s. And similar to disabilities. And disability is something that most humans are going to eventually experience sometime in their life. The third thing, when it comes out to coming out, it's also a personal choice, and it can be repeated throughout your life. The fourth thing, experiences vary widely. None of us are a monolith. And then fifth, it intersects with race, gender, age, faith, and class, and every other identity and lived experience. Being a Black disabled queer person can be different from being a white disabled queer person, to being two-spirit non-binary. Like, all of these things kind of intersect, which makes me think back to the mosaic, to represent, who we are. And so why is it that, like, more than 1 in 3 LGBTQIA2S plus adults live with disability? Like, why would it be more? And this next slide kind of lists the different reasons. And first of all, I'll say it's not inherently because we are queer. There can be a number of reasons. One can be the minority stress. We might have higher exposure to trauma. We've got mental health impacts. There is a neurodivergence overlap. So studies are showing that autistic and other neurodivergent people are more likely to identify as queer. And research is still studying why this is. So there's no hard facts right now to say why that is, but there are a number of different theories. One of them can be like our greater self-awareness. Like, people who've already navigated one identity might be more likely to recognize and seek diagnosis or disclose another. And with his consent, my partner James said I could share his story, that he is an out, trans man, and I asked him about his ADHD diagnosis, and he firmly believes that going through the experience of having to dive deep within yourself and have this self-discovery of being trans and not agreeing with your sex assigned at birth or the gender associated with it, then led to realizing, what, I need to accept and embrace, my neurodivergence as well. And so as you uncover these layers of who you are as a human, you can realize all these different aspects of yourself. Another reason why queer people might be more counted in disability spaces is because of barrier to care as well. Like, there's a lot more discrimination and unequal access, which can delay diagnosis. And so the result is that there's a significant overlap that's shaped by biology, life experience, and health disparities that might end up where we end up seeing that, 1 in 3 queer people are living with a disability at a higher rate of the general population within the United States. So moving on, empathy, like how can we understand our experience? So I'm going to quickly poll and ask you, and I'm looking at the time check and I realize that I'm going to have to speed up. Apologies. Have you come out at work as belonging for the queer community? I'd love to know if you've come out. 100% yes. Well, that was quick, wasn't it? Everybody here has come out. Have you come out at work as being disabled or living with a disability? 100% yes. This is awesome. Thank you, audience. And so with that, when it comes to building empathy, I have this acronym called CLEARS, which stands for the C is curiosity over criticism, L, listen generously, E is expand emotional vocabulary, A is allow discomfort, R, respect shared humanity, and S is stop assuming and start asking. And by the way, I'm very happy to share this deck with you. I'm sure you can take a screenshot if you would like. It's not proprietary. But I'd like to have these acronyms and these lists to help remind myself. And honestly, out of all of those different out of the 6 different steps, I would say the S, like stop assuming and start asking questions, is like one of the most important things. One of the on this slide here, I have Marissa Bodie, who is the actress who plays Nessa in Wicked, who is the first actress who authentically uses a wheelchair to portray a character in, of course, the film Wicked. I also have a screenshot from a title of an article called 17 Disabled and LGBTQ plus Celebrities Who Are Changing Hollywood. Please look this up after this presentation. It's on pride.com, and you can see disabled queer celebrities who are changing Hollywood, because our stories are completely undertold in media. And of course, GLAAD has a number of different studies and statistics and recognizes that while more than 1 in 3 queer adults live with a disability, only 1 in 40 queer television characters do. When you see people, when you learn stories, that's how you build empathy, and that's how stigma decreases and you have more of an inclusive environment. Also on this slide, I have a picture of a bucket to remind me to share an anecdote of somebody who shared with me that not only are they disabled with apparent disabilities, they're also a gay man. And in their workplace, they really wanted to co-chair their Pride ERG. And the response was, well, why don't you co-chair the disability ERG? And this is a common example of how other people make these assumptions of which identity is leading forward based on what they're seeing about the other person. And this person who is living with a disability actually really strongly wanted to be a part of gay queer advocacy more than disability advocacy, but people just kind of put people in different buckets based on the assumptions that they're making about others. Other stories that I've heard is like on this slide here to the right is somebody precariously carrying a stack of plates that looks like they're going to fall. And stories that I've heard are like when somebody is seen and understood and recognized for their lived experience, they're able to put this stack of plates that they feel like they're holding at work, put the plates down and just get on and do their job. The same with a mask. I have a picture of a mask here, and a lot of people feel like they're covering or masking what they're feeling on the inside. And when they're able to take the mask off, that they're able to actually effectively do their job. A lot of people are trying to hide pain. They're trying to check their energy. They're trying to fit in, and they're just trying to be normal, in quote unquote normal. And in fact, another quick story is that somebody shared with me that they were disclosing to somebody that they were disabled, and the comment was something like, "Oh, but you're so strong and you're so beautiful," and "No, you're not." And the reply was, "Well, no, I am strong and beautiful and competent, but I'm also disabled." So checking that you're not making assumptions is so important. The third point is action. Like, how do we create belonging? And here I'm using a quote from my dear friend, Amber Galloway, who is providing ASL interpretation today. Thank you, Amber. And Amber, I'm going to read Amber's quote. When communication access is planned from the beginning, it stops being an accommodation and becomes a statement that everyone belongs. We don't just feel included, we feel whole and welcome. And this is something that I also personally have had to learn during the presentation, excuse me, during my presentations and during my work, where you have to go through a checklist to make sure that you're thinking about accessibility first. So with that, we're going to quickly whip through a quiz, and it does look like your name is going to show up in the quiz. So if you don't want your name there, I would say use an acronym, and you do the Slido. So which of these was originally created for disabled people? Curb cuts, closed captions, audio books, electric toothbrushes, or all of the above? Which of these was used? Which was originally created for disabled people? Curb cuts, closed caption, audio books, electric toothbrushes. Excellent. 100% of you said all of the above. And so a lot of things that we use every day, whether we're disabled or not, are extremely, are used by everybody. And so oftentimes making something accessible is benefiting the majority. When you make it accessible for the margins, you're actually making it accessible for everybody. Which company co-designed a gaming controller with disabled gamers? Was it Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, or Sega? Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, or Sega. And this company not only designed for disabled gamers, they hired disabled gamers in order to create the design of their gaming control. And is anyone voting? Are you able to vote, Ryan? Is it
I got a note
working?
that
You can't
voting is
vote?
closed.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
There
Oh,
we go.
is it not? Why is it? That's weird. Okay. Why was the football huddle invented? To confuse the other team, to save time, to motivate players, because one player was deaf. Excellent, because one player was deaf. And this one, I found absolutely fascinating, that, yeah, a deaf player didn't want other people to be able to hear what they were saying through being able to understand their ASL. Who benefits from microphones? This one is one of my pet peeves, actually, because the choices are deaf and hard of hearing, people learning the speaker's language, people at the back of the room, neurodivergent attendees, people with auditory processing differences, all of the above. I don't know if you're able, you should be able to participate. Don't know why that's not working. Okay, all of the above. One of the things that I wish everybody knew, and I'm sure that you all have something, I wish everybody knew that. I wish that everybody knew that when someone stands to speak, using a microphone helps everybody. One of my pet peeves is when people stand to speak and they say, oh, I don't need a microphone. I'm like, yes, but I do. And it's not just if you're deaf and hard of hearing. And studies also show that when you're listening to a presentation, you actually retain the information better when you're hearing the speaker through the microphone. And then these phrases, which might unintentionally reinforce disability stereotypes. I was blindsided, it fell on deaf ears, that's crazy, I'm so OCD, turn a blind eye, confined to a wheelchair. And I guess, is the Slido not working at all, Ryan?
Some of them seem locked.
Okay. Well, I apologize that the technology is not working, and I have absolutely no reason to tell you why it is not. But all of these might be unintentional reinforced disability stereotypes, especially when you actually mean something else. So when you're saying I was blindsided, what you actually mean is, oh, I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't thinking of that. And blind people are very capable of thinking and being aware of things. Similar to fell on deaf ears, you're meaning somebody says that, thinking that, oh, you weren't listening. Well, deaf people do listen. They're just using a different language in different ways. And so, okay, well done, Corin. I guess that you won this because you were able to help in the warm up. And so it really kind of begs the question that we've had in some of our belonging groups is like, who is the average employee? Because really, there's no such thing as an average employee. Everybody has different needs for accessibility to belong in a different space. And so I love to go back to use the colors in the pride flag to remind myself of, am I creating a space where everyone can get in? Like, is it physically accessible? Have we considered neurodiversity? Have we considered whether people can access support even when they don't want to have to disclose a diagnosis? Does the environment create psychological safety? And then, of course, sensory. Have we planned for captions, microphones, and so on? Also, to note is that the majority of people who are deaf don't necessarily understand English as their first language. So having captions doesn't automatically make something accessible. And so it's all of these other nuances. And of course, by learning and listening is the way to be able to understand how to make it an environment where everyone feels included. So where do we go from here? We go back to the 3 points. And that's one is building your awareness, both of yourself and others. Number 2 is building your empathy. And number 3 is taking action in order to create belonging. And on a final note, I'd like to add that my father and I do have an amazing relationship. I love him very much. And I used the flippant comment that he made, "Are bisexuals just greedy?" To title my first book. So if you would like a copy of my book, or if you'd like to know more, then please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And or you can scan the QR code on the bottom right that hopefully works. And you could enter to win a fireside chat and a copy of my book. And I think that I raced through that in the end, Ryan, in order to leave at least 5 minutes for people to drop in the chat. But if anyone would like to get in touch with me, or like if you have a question that I'm not able to answer now, please do. And I'd love to be able to have a deeper conversation with you. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Fiona, if you want to put that slide back up again, just so that folks can get that QR code and your email address, we'll leave that up as we close out.
Great. There you go.
While we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions, I will just quickly thank our sponsors, ExxonMobil, HP, and Shell, who are sponsoring this entire Lunch and Learn series and our Workplace Alliance program throughout the year. We thank them for their support and for being able to um, have Fiona, who gave us a discount for today's presentation, but she's available for your companies as well if you want to reach out to her through Free Lion Productions to have her continue to share her expertise with all of you. Um, we do also want to quickly thank Amber, who jumped in at the last minute. We ourselves are on a journey and had not planned ahead as we should have, but we really appreciate Amber for helping us at the last minute to be more inclusive um, in our own efforts. Well,
That's
I'm not
great. And
seeing any questions. Fiona, I do
yeah,
love that slide that you showed earlier that talked about the sort of overlap and similarities. One other
yeah,
similarity of the LGBT experience and the disability experience I've had friends share, not every person with a disability has an older mentor to look up to who shares the same disability. Sometimes it's
yeah,
genetic, like your parents might have a hearing issue and then you also have one, but sometimes you're the only person in your family that has that disability. And similarly, sometimes LGBT folks lack those older mentors that might be
hmm,
different for gender or race, where sometimes there is at least one person in your network that you can reach out to, a
yeah,
family member, a cousin, an aunt. So it is sometimes isolating to have a disability, is what I've been
yeah.
told. Do you
It's
feel that as well?
Yes, and I will say, I really, want to take this moment to uplift Out and Equal because they have these incredible belonging groups, and volunteering to co-chair that group is one of the most precious, important things that I do with my life because we sit on a call for like 90 minutes every quarter, and people are sharing their stories that just not only move you, but it's one of the only places where they find that everybody has something in common. Everybody is disabled and everybody is queer. And it's very rare to find that you're having this complete overlap. And I will also say that when I'm in a space with disabled first, it's almost assumed that you're probably queer in some way as well. And I've been in many queer spaces before I was in the disability spaces. And of course, disability people live in those queer spaces. But when we're queer first, we're not talking about it as much. And it's like when you look at the data to show the 1 in 3, it's like, how can we advocate for queer equity when we're not considering disability? And I look forward to having that more and more. So, Ryan, more people have mentors and people who they know are sharing that experience with them.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Fiona. We are at time. We're going to lose Amber in just a second as well. So we want to go ahead and say goodbye to everyone. Thank you again for joining today's conversation. And thank you, Fiona, so much for giving us your
Pleasure.
time and expertise.
It's a
Everyone have a
pleasure.
great day.
Thank you.